What if you discovered that the love of your life has a secret that turns your world upside down? In this chilling tale, we follow Olivia, who stumbles upon Mario's dark secrets. What begins as a romantic journey unravels into a terrifying revelation that puts everything at risk. Get ready for a roller coaster of emotions and suspense. This is not just a story. It's a nightmare you'll never forget. My name is Olivia, and this is my story. A few years ago, I met a very handsome gentleman. That day, I had to go to the store for my mother, who complained nonstop about not wanting to go, so I decided to go myself. On my way there, a very beautiful car passed by, and I saw it stop at the store. When I arrived at the store, I no longer focused on the car, but on what I needed to buy. The Chinese cashier was busy checking out when I heard from behind, "Shall I pay for you?" I turned around, and damn, those butterflies in my stomach went wild. A handsome, light brown man with rosy lips, very well dressed, coat and tie. Whoa. I was excited, but I heard myself say, "Yes, only if you leave your number too." Like, WTF, I thought to myself. Olivia, why do you always have to be cheeky? I immediately turned around because I was now embarrassed, and suddenly I felt a hand around my waist, and he whispered in my ear that he would leave his number for a beautiful lady like me. I was about to lose it in the store, goosebumps everywhere. He paid, and we walked outside together, and I saw that the car was his. He asked if he could drop me home, and without thinking, I said yes. He dropped me off at home, but when we arrived, he drove off and I thought, oh, am I being kidnapped because he's gone? He then said, "Now that I know where you live, let's go for a drive. You don't have to be scared. I just want to get to know you." We drove to the city and talked about various things. His name was Romario, 33 years old, recently moved to Europe. He was Brazilian, but his mother was from Europe, which is why he spoke Dutch and visited here often for vacation. From his story, I could also tell he was well off. He took me out for dinner and then home. He took my number and gave me 50 euros on top. I was shocked. Why was he just giving me money? He said it was a little treat for me. I accepted it and got out. I was completely smitten with this man. His vibe, the way he spoke, his looks, smile, money, just everything. After that day, Romario started visiting me more often, picking me up, taking me for walks, buying me nice and expensive gifts, and always claimed he wasn't after sex, that everything would happen in its own time. He dropped me off at work and picked me up again, pampered me, gave me plenty of attention. I got real princess treatment from him. I fell head over heels in love with him and became very jealous when we went out, because I saw other women eyeing him so much that I even fought with one who dared to flirt with him right in front of me. Romario found it sexy that it happened. And that night, after 6 months together, we finally had sex. It was amazing. He was well endowed and very good in bed. Romario had my heart, and no one could separate us. For my birthday, he planned an amazing date, and when we arrived, I had a fantastic time. We ate, laughed, cuddled. It was just wonderful. When dessert came, I saw something written on the plate, and when I read it, I almost had a heart attack. And yes, you guessed it. It said, "Will you marry me?" I screamed with joy, "Yes," and cried in his arms. I really didn't expect this and was so happy and excited. I got a beautiful ring with a large stone. I couldn't wait to show it off. We left and had amazing sex in the car, and he dropped me off at home. I ran inside because I wanted to tell my mother. She was very happy for me, but thought that I was rushing things since I had only known Mario for 7 months. I thought she should just be happy for me and not interfere. So, my mother and I had a fight that evening. I went to my room and didn't speak to her for days after that. Romario and I started looking for a house to live together. He wanted us to move in together, even though I wasn't ready to live with a man yet. I didn't tell him that. But I did it because I loved him and was ready to do anything for him. We found a house in the north. I won't say exactly where. It was a beautiful, large house. He said he would buy it and asked if I was okay with it. I said yes. Big love after all. He even wanted to put it in my name and asked me, "Romario, do you love me so much that you want to do this?" With tears in my eyes, because I had never experienced such things, and it felt so good. And I was already excited to show off my house, since people already made such a fuss about my ring when they saw my house. Romario came to pick me up one evening and took me to that house. At the front door, he gave me the key and said, "Here you go, baby. This is yours from today." I jumped on him, kissed him, and we ran inside. We played around in the house. We were happy. The next morning, I went home and told my mother, and she was not at all happy that I was moving. She called me stupid and naive, and I felt she was just jealous because she didn't have it good herself. I told her, "Just because your man has never put you in a house or proposed doesn't mean my child shouldn't get it." After I said that, wow, the beating I got from her. I shoved her and went straight to my room, slamming the door in her face because she came after me. I called Mario, and he came immediately. My mother had really cursed him out, and I felt sorry for him. We left immediately. I didn't even take my clothes with me. In the car, Mario cried for me because he thought he didn't deserve it, and wondered why my mother couldn't just accept him and be happy for me and leave the rest to me. I was so angry at my mother that I kept her at a distance for years. Mario also really stirred me up after a while, but we'll get to that later. Back home, I saw a car outside, a Harrier, and asked Mario if we had visitors, and he laughed and said, "No, baby, that's your car." He had bought it the day before. I started crying like a baby in his arms and couldn't thank him enough. So, looking back, Mario was love bombing me. But well, life between us was good. For those wondering if I ever asked him what he did for a living, yes, he told me that they had a family business and that he worked with his father, both here and in Brazil. I'd rather not mention the business name as it is still active. Anyway, his aunt was having a birthday, so we went there. Mind you, she lives in French Guiana, so we had to go there. I was very excited because I had never been there before, so I was ready. The day came and we left. When we arrived, I saw a lot of family members, so I got nervous. But Mario encouraged me, so it was fine. Later that evening, we had a great time. His family was friendly and cozy, and I also met his father, who was really a nice and friendly man, or so I thought. I was in the kitchen, and his aunt came up to me and said, "Oh, you're really the lucky one, spoiled and all." I smiled, and then she stopped smiling, looked outside, and then back at me and said, "Be on your guard, girl. Not everything that glitters are gold. You have been warned." I asked her why she said that, but at that moment, Romario walked in, and she gave him a peculiar smile, almost as if she was scared. Mario smiled at her and said, "Aunt, they are waiting for you outside." He then looked at me and said we were going to leave. When we got to our hotel, he asked me to go inside first, and he needed to do something with his father and would be back soon. I didn't think much of it and agreed, went inside, took a bath, put on lingerie, and waited for Mario. I looked at the time. It was 9 p.m. After a while, I fell asleep. I woke up and saw that the sun was already shining. It was 6:30 a.m., and Mario was nowhere to be found. I was getting worried, was about to call him when he walked in with breakfast and an iced coffee and said, "Ah, my princess is awake. Did you sleep well?" I asked him where he had been, and he said that I was sleeping so peacefully that he didn't want to disturb me, even though he was super horny from my lingerie. He had just come to sleep and woke up early to surprise me with breakfast in bed. Despite my instincts telling me not to believe him, I just said, "Ah, babe, you could have just woke me up because I was waiting for you." The reason I didn't believe him was that I would have felt him lying next to me, and secondly, I had woken up slightly around 4 a.m. and hadn't seen him anywhere. We had sex, and after breakfast, we went out to explore the city. It was nice. We went to the zoo and ate ice cream. We returned to the hotel in the evening, and I went to bed early. Mario came in and said he had to do something for his father. I didn't mind, so I told him to take his time. He came in at 12 p.m. that night. I was almost asleep and asked him where he had been, and he said, "Princess, I've told you, working for my father, not only for me, but also for you and us." I smiled and said, "Okay, baby." We had sex again, and I fell asleep. The next morning, he was up early and told me he was going to pick up his aunt's gift because she was having a party. I had a great time and wasn't worried about him. At the party, everyone was so kind to me. I was chatting with his cousins when his father came up to me and asked how things were between us. I told him everything was great. He then asked if I wanted to give his son children, and I told him that we were just married and that we'd see how it goes. He told me I should hurry up and get pregnant because the family was waiting for grandchildren. I laughed and said, "Don't worry, sir. We're working on it." I don't remember much of the rest of the evening. I danced, drank, and had fun. When we got home, Mario was in bed. I wanted to have sex with him, but he said he was too tired and needed rest because he had to work early in the morning. I said okay and went to bed. The next morning, he was gone again. I woke up and felt something was off. I wanted to call him, but my phone had no signal. I thought it was the hotel and went downstairs to the reception. I asked them to check my phone because I had no signal. The reception said they had no issues with their signal, so I asked if I could use their phone. I wanted to call my mother and let her know I was fine. I tried calling Mario, but he didn't pick up. I tried his Brazilian number, and there was no answer. I left a message saying I was worried. I then called my mother, but she didn't pick up either. I felt uneasy and went back to the room. Mario showed up around lunchtime and said he had been to his family and that they needed something. He asked if I had eaten, and I said no. He went downstairs to get something to eat. When he came back, he was very friendly, and I asked him if he had had a good time. He said yes. We had sex, and then went back to the party. I tried calling my mother again that evening, didn't reach her. I decided to let it be. The party went on, and Mario looked tired, but kept saying he had to get up early. I said, "It's okay, Mario. We'll have some rest." At that moment, I noticed that his father and aunt were talking quietly, and then looked at me. I felt uneasy again, but dismissed it and enjoyed myself. The next morning, Mario was gone again, but I noticed that my phone was out of order. I didn't worry and decided to wait. I went shopping with Mario's aunt, but when I tried to call him, it didn't work. I was annoyed and decided to go to the hotel to look for him. When I arrived, I didn't see his car, and I was concerned. I asked the reception if they had seen him, but they hadn't. I went back to the room, but there was still no sign of him. I felt sick and went downstairs again. Mario's aunt was also looking for him, and she asked if I had heard from him. I said no and started crying. The next day, Mario showed up and said he had been busy with his family's business and that they had some issues. He was very kind and apologized. I didn't get a good feeling from it. And when I got back home, I decided to tell my mother everything. She was happy to hear from me and said she had been worried. I showed her pictures from the trip and told her how everything had gone. She noticed something was off about Mario and asked if I had any doubts. I told her I felt like I was missing something, but she said I should just trust him. She also reminded me that I should be careful. It had been several weeks since Mario's suspicious behavior began, and I was growing more anxious by the day. Despite my mother's warnings and my own instincts, I wanted to believe in our future together. But something didn't add up. One evening, as Mario prepared for yet another late-night business meeting, I decided to follow him. My heart pounded with both fear and determination. I waited until he left, and then quietly slipped out of the house, making sure not to alert him. I followed him at a safe distance, keeping to the shadows as he drove through the city. My stomach churned with unease as we eventually arrived at a rundown warehouse on the outskirts of town. I watched from a distance as Mario entered, and a few moments later, several other cars arrived, their headlights cutting through the night like beacons. Unable to contain my curiosity, I crept closer to the warehouse, finding a small, partially open window. Peering through, I saw Mario in heated conversation with several men. Their voices were low, but I could catch snippets of their discussion. Something about money, shipments, and a big deal that was going down. The tension in the room was palpable. My heart sank as I realized that Mario was involved in something dangerous and illegal. I needed to get back to the house and confront him. But as I turned to leave, a hand clamped over my mouth, and I was dragged away. Panic surged through me as I struggled, but the assailant was too strong. I was thrown into the back of a van, and the world spun around me. When the van finally stopped, I was dragged out and into a dimly lit room. I was thrown into a chair and bound. Mario appeared, his face a mix of anger and something else I couldn't quite place. He approached me, his eyes cold. "Olivia," he said, his voice laced with menace. I didn't want it to come to this. I stared at him, my mind racing. "What is this, Mario? What are you involved in?" He sighed, looking away. "I didn't mean to drag you into this. I wanted to protect you, but I should have known you'd find out." Before I could react, the door burst open, and his father, looking surprisingly calm, stepped inside. He carried a briefcase, which he placed on a table. The room was filled with a tense silence as the men around us eyed him. "I told you not to get too close, Romario," his father said, addressing Mario. "You should have kept her out of this." Mario's face twisted in frustration. "You don't understand, Dad. I was trying to give her everything she wanted, but she's too smart for her own good." The situation was spiraling out of control, and I could see that the men were getting restless. It was clear that Mario's father was involved in some kind of illicit activity, and Mario was deeply entangled in it. Desperate to find a way out, I began to twist and turn in my restraints, trying to loosen them. My heart raced as Mario turned to face me again. "I'm sorry, Olivia," he said, his voice filled with regret. "I never wanted you to be in danger, but now it's too late." The door suddenly swung open, and the sound of sirens filled the air. Panic erupted among the men as they scrambled to escape. Mario's father grabbed the briefcase and fled, leaving Mario and me behind. The police stormed in, and within minutes, the warehouse was swarming with officers. I was freed from my restraints, and one of the officers helped me out of the room. I saw Mario being led away in handcuffs, his face a mix of sorrow and defeat. I wanted to call out to him, but words failed me. As the sun began to rise, I stood outside the warehouse, my mind a whirl of emotions. Mario was being taken away, and my life had been turned upside down. The reality of his double life had shattered the illusion of our perfect romance. I had trusted him with my heart, only to find out that he was involved in something far more dangerous than I could have imagined. With a heavy heart, I turned to face the new reality. I had to rebuild my life from the shattered pieces, knowing that sometimes love isn't enough to overcome the darkness hidden behind a charming facade.